I have a question about referring on. I've always wondered about the practicalities. Example, how do you find a dietitian who is experienced in that condition promptly? What happens if the dietitian you refer the patient to doesn't accept the referral? Do you try and find someone else? In the meantime, what do you tell the client? Whilst I understand the importance of referring on, I would imagine it can get a bit messy when you don't have a big network in the industry yet.
Good question.
All valid points.
Good question. Do you want to go this first? You gonna go it or not?
Nah, you start.
Processing. I can see the wheel.
Yes, see a hamster wheel in her head. Put a little pop up hamster wheel. When should you refer on is probably like the first question. So if you're a new grad and you're coming out and you got no support, then that's already an issue. Case in point. But if you're a dietitian that's been in the industry a lot longer, that just doesn't have that area of expertise. It's usually eating disorders is a common one, or complex food intolerances, or pediatric food intolerances would be common ones that people would refer on or want to refer on, as well as probably elite athletes when people get kind of just like, holy crap, I don't know what to do. So knowing those things as a first line of action is really good, because then you should be able to just Google dietitian that.
Did you just say
Google.
Use Google.
Dietitian that condition and see what pops up. Then do research on them if you really want to make sure that you're definitive on what kind of skills they had. So
email
you go
them,
LinkedIn.
call them, LinkedIn.
Yeah. Could email. She would call. I'm never going to call someone.
100% will call.
But yeah, and then identify what actual skills they have. And a lot of dietitians just list everything, because private practice in general is quite difficult, and getting enough clients through the doors is always a thing. So they just want to get referred to everyone. How will you know whether or not they're good? You're not going to unless you try it. So it's telling the client like, hey, this person, I haven't referred anyone to them before, but they're meant to be good in this condition. I'd really like some feedback once you do it to identify whether or not you're going to refer on again.
Big one is know your people and know the people in your industry. Tyson and I spent a lot of time getting to know the people in the industry, because whilst it might be, I don't know, you would think it's invaluable, but it actually is invaluable. So from a networking point of view, whether you meet them in person or even you just know what they do, and it may not be things that you want to do or you like, but at least you then know. And so say, for example, this happens to you, then you at least have some people that you might be able to contact to say, hey, actually, do you know? So it's creating networks of people who you are around. It doesn't have to be in that physical location. We have so many ways we can access people.
Yeah, and then it's just like, by the same token, if you only know one person that's good at eating disorders in Australia that you know, hit up them and go, do you know anyone in this area? Like, hit up an expert that might not be in your area and ask them if they know someone in your area, because you're not going to know a lot of the time, and it is freaking hard, and it is going to be trial and error, but just doing that. So in terms of Peter saying we know people, it's over time, but it's also not just knowing them, but also seeing their content. You can go on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, you know what they're kind of talking about, you know where you have respect for them, where other bits where you're like, oh, that's not quite I want my clients to be told, like when some dietitians go down the low carb, high fat route, and that's where they live, or different stuff around treating diabetes. Knowing the different people and what they have in terms of philosophies is not about us knowing them on a personal level all the time. Like sometimes we do, but on a personal level not. It's just around researching them and knowing the industry, because dietetics is quite small, and you can usually, just based on looking at a conference list, figure out who gets talking on different topics, figure out who's in research in Australia.
Yeah, and if you seriously don't know, when I worked in the country and there wasn't a lot of choice, I would ring up major centres, and they do get back to you. And from that, you may not then be able to refer off to somebody else, but they might be able to give some ideas about how to approach that client. And the only way to feel more confident is to have a go at doing it yourself, but making sure that you are using other people that are working in those fields. So I remember calling Anne Swain and Dorothy, two of the major dietitians at RPAH, a number of times, and they actually do get back to you, and they really, really helped me to feel more confident and develop my skills, which was really handy, particularly in an isolating setting.
And yeah, the only one that I've really asked for help on is on eating disorders, because it was the Eating Disorder Outreach Service, which is kind of like a Queensland-based thing, was run by Shane Jeffries, kind of out of it now, but basically helps anyone around that. It's mostly Queensland based, but they have all the contacts of everyone. But then it's also hitting up different foundations, like so Butterfly Foundation, for example. Just I'm going eating disorder route, but Like, you could hit up them and see if they've got relationships with different dietitians in different areas to give you some way of going about it. So it doesn't have to be actually a dietitian. It could be organisations that kind of support that client base. So like RPAH, for example, Peter didn't know anyone, but called the person who developed basically the elimination diet and then went out from there. But other than that, hit up us on Dietitian Life.
Always.
And we may know someone, or we'll have the avenues to find out for you. So
You're not alone,
yes.
but all hard challenges, depending on wherever you work.
But yeah, I definitely think it's a good idea to refer on when you are a bit overwhelmed, but also trying to develop your skills in that so you're not as overwhelmed. And most dietitians should be able to get through just an initial consult with them, so you can do more research post and figure out whether you do need to refer on.
Yeah, and make sure that if you are going to do that and you do your triage appointments, you need to get as much information as possible, because then if you're going to go off to somebody else and you're coming with them with missing information, they're not going to be able to help you. So do your best to make sure you get every single thing you can from that client based on your assessment skills, and then somebody else could help you
another thing,
from a distance.
On DA and SDA discussion boards, there are like the different interest groups where you can hit people up there and go, hey, is anyone in this area that could take on this client? It happens a lot with Sports Dietitians Australia. I'm just around asking around different events that are like ridiculous, like huge ultra marathons and that kind of thing. But in terms of DAA, they've got a lot of interest groups in their website where you can subscribe to all of that and then stay in the loop there.
So many things.
I am a third year student at Griffith University on the Gold Coast. I'm also a qualified chef. The point of this message is to ask you your opinion on where you think my skills will be more beneficial in the dietetic field. The idea is to combine my chef skills with dietetics and then be able to share that knowledge with others. Just unsure where, who, or what areas would suit me.
Oh my god.
We have a lot of chefs in our company.
So, yeah. So pretty much the question is, I'm a chef, had 15 years experience, third year dietetic student. How the hell do I use it effectively? Yeah?
Correct.
Well, if you're going to be a dietitian, you're going to be able to use it effectively. Like, you just being a dietitian in a basically case management one-on-one thing, it's going to help you because you're going to know food, you're going to know recipes, you should know how to strategically utilize your cooking skills to help that client get the easiest wins, to make it easy for them to implement your changes. So that is 100% the easiest way to do it. Outside of that, I don't know how much you want to use it. You could do cooking classes, you can do like events like that, you could write a book, you could...
I would say that potentially the reason for why you've left chefing is because you don't want
like
to do it anymore. So like, whilst it's good information and it's useful to being a good dietitian, it does not make you a better dietitian. So I would use it if you want to, but if you don't want to use it, sweet. It's sort of like, oh, I'm going to go do personal training because it'll add value to me as a dietitian. But it's like, well, it is a little separate. I think you could possibly, if you're going to work in a private practice space, use it as add-on value. So cooking classes or developing recipes or whatever, but it doesn't necessarily change the dietetics.
Outside of that, you could probably work with different companies. So if it's food industry, for example, you having chef knowledge and chef background and like food science, food tech kind of knowledge will assist with that in combination with your dietitian message. So whether there's food industry stuff where you want to work in that area where you're not going to be working client on client, but you client on dietitian.
So it might be more population based and food specific, and it might make you more employable in that space.
Yeah. As well as like food service, like that, where you could be more employable, but at the same time in food service, you're not the person that's cooking, and usually the chefs have a pretty good idea as what they want to do, and you're just doing the dietetic angle of it. So maybe not, but that's pretty much where. So food, dietetics, you think it's a match made in heaven, but at the same time, one doesn't make you better, but it can be a good add-on in those different avenues.